So this past summer, a buddy and I were in need of some quality time wasting. We wanted to do something that neither of us had ever done before. We wanted to do something exciting. So we decided to do a puzzle. And we didn't have any puzzles, so we made our way down to the store. We picked up the most interesting looking puzzle we could find, headed home to get started. Now, I should start out by saying that at first, we were awful at doing the puzzle. And I mean awful. But we started it, so we were going to finish it. After all, it was classified as a puzzle for 12-year-olds, and there was only 500 pieces. We figured, what with us both being 22, we could handle it. And I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but fast forward 3.5 weeks, and we still have about 100 pieces sitting on my dining room table. But things had finally started to click for us. Pick up a piece, put it in the puzzle, repeat. We began to get excited as the number of pieces dwindled. 10 pieces left. Now 9, 8, 7, 6 pieces. Finally, there it was. Well, actually, there it wasn't. You see, staring straight at us was this beautiful 500-piece puzzle minus one. Or, as we considered it, this hideous 499-piece puzzle. And we couldn't have that, not given the amount of time that we had spent on it, so we searched, literally everywhere. We couldn't find it. Unsatisfied, we made our way back down to the store. The plan was simple. We'll find the piece that we need, we'll put it in our puzzle, and then we'll destroy the evidence. And yes, before you ask, I was going to pay $15 for what essentially was one tiny piece of cardboard. But alas, they were sold out. So that night, I'm sitting at the table, upset as you might imagine. And I'm upset for 2 reasons. For starters, the puzzle's ruined. Without that last piece, I can't finish it. And if I can't finish it, then really, what was it worth? But what was more upsetting was the fact that the past 3.5 weeks had literally been wasted. All that time for nothing. But as upset as I was that night, I am just as thankful now. For that missing puzzle piece put into perspective what makes me happy. And in doing so, open my eyes to what I've come to talk about today. Motivation. Why do we do the things we do? And more specifically, I want to talk about the benefit of living an intrinsically motivated lifestyle. Now, for those who don't know, there are basically 2 types of motivation. Extrinsic motivation is when your desire to do something is precipitated by the promise of a reward or the fear of a punishment. For example, if somebody offered you $100 to show up and clap as loudly as you could when Jeremy Grebin finished talking, well, that would be an example of an extrinsically motivated action. You showed up because you wanted the money. Quite similarly, if you're sitting here quietly because you don't want to be thrown back to class, that's also an example of an extrinsically motivated action. I consider this the what's in it for me lifestyle. Now, I don't think we're born this way. I do think we're bred this way. It starts when we're infants. We get treats and rewards for doing things like behaving well and performing admirably, things of that nature. However, and we do it under the impression that rewards reinforce action. However, there have been studies that show that rewards may actually diminish the value of an activity. In other words, if I got a reward for doing this activity, it must not be that satisfying on its own, and therefore the activity projects less intrigue. Take that a step further, and we fall under the impression that an activity isn't worth doing without the presence of a reward. Like I said, what's in it for me? The second type of motivation I want to talk about, though, is intrinsic motivation. And that's when your desire to do something is fueled by internal factors. And there are 3 main factors that I like to consider when dealing with intrinsic motivation. Is it challenging? Am I curious about it? And is it cooperative? And quite unlike extrinsic motivation, we are born with intrinsic motivation, but bred away from it. The first factor I mentioned is it challenging? Is this specific activity going to challenge me mentally or physically? It's been said that our lives are just a series of moments in which we are continuously trying to improve our situation. The only way to improve our situation is to improve ourselves. An activity that demands something of your mind or your body develops skills, strength, and knowledge. There have actually been studies that attempting any feat, including those that end in failure, that demand something of us, actually produces more satisfaction than attempting a feat which makes no demand of our body or mind. Essentially, we want to be the best that we can be. The second thing I mentioned was, am I curious about it? This one's pretty straightforward. We want to do things that we like to do. For instance, if you like to paint, you don't need someone to offer you a reward to paint. That's not to say you wouldn't take the reward, but at the end of the day, you're going to paint because, well, you like to paint. The bottom line is we are passionate about things that we're interested in. The third factor I mentioned was, is it cooperative? And by cooperative, I don't mean an activity that necessarily requires a partner. Cooperative here wants to know, is this specific action benefiting others? I'm a firm believer that people are naturally good. And if it weren't for the what's in it for me culture that we live in, we would all be more interested in helping others than we would be with helping ourselves. I was actually talking to my sister the other day, and the story she told me lends itself perfectly to this principle. Basically, she told me, during the last snowstorm, where it snowed 12 inches in March, weird, she was out shoveling her driveway. She looked over and she noticed her neighbor's driveway hadn't been touched. Her neighbor is a much older gentleman, so despite her absolute hatred of shoveling, she went next door and she shoveled her neighbor's driveway. She wasn't asked to do this. She wasn't paid to do this. So why would she go over and shovel his driveway? She was motivated to shovel her neighbor's driveway because it was cooperative. She was helping someone else out. I believe that naturally, we all want to do what we can to help others who can't. So, what's the benefit of living an intrinsically motivated lifestyle? Well, when an action is fueled by one of these three factors I just talked about, we produce what I call genuine happiness. What I mean by genuine happiness is that it is a pure emotion. It's not predicated by wealth, rewards, even recognition. It's purely an emotion. It's genuine happiness. And in my opinion, the only way to reach genuine happiness is to do something that's intrinsically motivated. Now, unfortunately, we live in a world today where extrinsic motivation exists around every corner. And sometimes we lose sight of genuine happiness. No longer do we always seek self-improvement, or for that matter, pursue what we are interested in. We tend to seek the easiest path to the most riches. I know, because I used to live that way. But then I lost that piece of cardboard, and I found genuine happiness. What started out as a way to simply pass the time has now turned into a way of life. In the past 7 months, I've done 7 puzzles totaling roughly 150 hours. Like I said, I wasn't very good at doing the puzzle. But now I do puzzles because I find them interesting. I do puzzles because I find them challenging. And at the end of every puzzle, I leave a piece out to serve as a reminder to myself that I do puzzles for no reason other than the fact that I like to do puzzles. And then I have them framed, and I give them away as gifts in hopes to show other people that time doing what you love to do is never time wasted. Thank you.